It's the holiday season. So, what is more important during the holidays than family? Nothing. I can think of nothing more important during the holiday season than families. And today I'm speaking with an author who has made a career of writing books about families. You may know her as Cade Bentley. You may know her as Abby Collette. She also goes by Abby Vandiver. She's out with 3 new books this year. We're going to be talking about those books, particularly one that caught my attention, which is Where Wild Peaches Grow. Coming up next is Abby Vandiver.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
I'm super excited today to welcome Abby Vandiver. Good morning, Abby.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You are a prolific, and I mean that word in the truest sense, prolific writer. You've written 35 books. So I got to start. We're going to talk today about Where Wild Peaches Grow and some of the other titles that you had come out just this year alone. But I want to start with, where do you find the time, or how have you found the time to write 35 books? That's quite impressive.
Well, I can write a book in about 3 weeks, so it doesn't take me long, but I usually need some kind of motivation, like a deadline is coming up, and then I'm on it. I previously was a lawyer and an economics professor, and I got and couldn't practice or work, and I was in bed worrying about things to do, and I thought, I'll write. I love to write, and it just stuck with me.
Wow. As a lawyer, practicing lawyer myself, I'm really always intrigued. I have a lot of lawyer friends who have become authors. Even one of my closest friends, she's become a child, like a children's book author. She's writing young adult fiction. And that's curious to me. When I think of lawyers turned authors, I'm thinking of Scott Turow and others who typically write about the legal profession, like the firm and, Reasonable Doubt, those books that take you inside a law firm or take you inside a courtroom or inside a legal case. You are best known for what's called cozy mystery. So how did you go from this law degree background, this professor background, to writing cozy mysteries? And then tell us what cozy mysteries are for those folks who may not have heard that term before.
Well, every time I go somewhere, that's a new term to people. So I'm good at explaining what it is. And what I usually say is that I kill people. Cozy mysteries are murder mysteries. They're a subgenre of mystery, but they are murder in a fun way, if you will, because they're light. The murder happens off stage. All violence happens off stage. If there's any romance in it, it's sweet romance and not much of it. It's usually a slow burn over a series of books. And there's always an amateur sleuth. So think Murder, She Wrote, Jessica Fletcher, where an everyday kind of guy or woman, in most cases, decides, in my books, always reluctantly, to go and find a killer. Why people would think to do that and not leave it to the police, I don't know. So I don't write about the firm and things. I write about murder. I like to say I'd rather write about murderers than defend them in court. So, it's fun to put it on the page.
Go ahead, finish.
And then I switched over to the women's fiction. So I didn't kill anyone in that.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about this incredible women's fiction, Where Wild Peaches Grow, but I want to stick with this transition for a minute, because so many people, Abby, say they want to write a book. They have a book that they want to write. You just did it. You didn't go back and get a master's of fine arts. You didn't go back to get, like a degree in writing. What advice do you have for someone who's sitting at home watching this, who has been saying for years that they want to write a book? What was that, that moment where you said, okay, I'm going to stop thinking about this and I'm going to put pen to paper and actually get this done?
Well, I tell everyone to finish a book. Everyone tells me. I am the writer in residence for the Cuyahoga County Public Library System. It encompasses about 27 libraries. And so I have writers from all over the greater Cleveland area where I live coming and asking me that same question. And what I always tell them, usually they say, I've started a book or it's in my head. I tell them, just get it on the paper and get it finished. That's the hard part. Most people will start something and they don't get it finished. So whatever it is, however it turns out, it will not be perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect book. Just write it and get it out. And then local libraries, local literary clubs, Facebook, online groups, there's plenty of places to get help and to get that motivation. I think once you learn the craft, you'll be more motivated to finish the book. So surround yourself with other writers. And I think that you will find that you can do it. Most people can write a book if you take the time to learn how to do it. Contact me. I'll help you. I love helping people.
We love our guests who are willing to offer their expertise and help others, because sometimes we just need to, get out of our head. As you said, it's in our head. We just got to get it into that, that format, get it out of our head and onto the paper. Right. But Abby, you've done something else that a lot of people have not been able to accomplish, even once they've written a book, and that's get published. Because we know writing a book, and I have 4 books that I've written. 1 I self-published, 3 I had published through a publishing, a literary house. And I know you also have self-published, and you have also had traditional publishers. What was that like, going from, okay, now I got the book down on paper, but now I got to see if somebody's willing to pay me for having written this book. So what advice do you have for those folks who, say, I can get the book written, but how do I get an agent, or how do I actually get it published through a traditional publishing agent?
I'm probably not the best person to ask for that, because I'll tell you my story and I'll tell you why. But my advice is just keep trying. Just keep trying. But there's so many avenues now with self-publishing. I don't believe in the subsidiary publishing where you pay someone and they're considering it self-published. Don't do that. Self-publishing is free. And I teach classes on that all the time at the library for free. And I give my advice for free. So don't pay to publish your book. And then, of course, the traditional route. So what happened with me, I had self-published about 25 books and never thought, I was still sick at the time, in and out the hospital, never thought about being traditionally published because, as you say, I don't have an MFA. I have a master's in a bachelor's in economics, a master's in public administration, and a JD. So nothing that has to do with writing. So I never thought to go that route. And I was just trying to promote one of my self-published books. I went to a tiny press. They were doing a giveaway where if you submit your book to them, they would give you the email addresses of all the participants, which would help me build my email subscriber list. And of course, I need to market myself to sell my books. And they told me, Abby, we love your voice. I didn't have the faintest idea what voice meant. I just started writing. I didn't know. So they said, so write us 4 chapters. If we like it, we'll publish you. So that was my first foray into the traditionally published world with this small press that they asked me to write for them. I didn't query them at all. And before the first book came out, it's called Secrets, Lies, and Crawfish Pies, an agent actually contacted me. And I went to my local librarian, Lori Kinzer, at the library where I'm always frequenting. And I said, I don't believe this. Agents don't come to you. She said, well, let's look it up. You know, librarians, they can put their finger on any book. And certainly she found a book, and we found that it was a legitimate literary agency.
It was not a scam. This was a real person with real expertise and a track record and a resume.
Exactly.
And okay.
And wanted to represent me. So of course I got on the phone in my car. I was so nervous. I just put myself in the car, shut the doors, rolled up the windows, and talked to her on the phone. And I signed a contract that day. So I had an easy route. It's not that simple. I mean, you hear people like Stephen King and J.K. Rowling. They submitted 50, 90 manuscripts before they were actually picked up. And I am nowhere near where they are. So just imagine if you, as a writer, continue and just be determined to do it, you can do it as well. Just make sure your craft gets up to par. Mm-hmm.
I love that story, because what it says is that even when you least expect something good to happen, something good can happen. And that's why it's so important. And I tell people this all the time too. if you are a writer, you should be writing. Don't worry about the fact that you're not published or you don't have an agent, because some of those things are out of your control. You had a very easy route. My first book where I got an agent, I was writing about a subject matter that was very timely. My first book was about autism and my journey as a mom of an autistic son and what I had learned as a mother, advocate, and lawyer. And so the topic was timely. So getting an agent ended up being a relatively easy process for me as well, and getting that book sold. But the reality was I didn't think of myself as a writer. I just was trying to get this information out to people. I thought of myself more as an information broker. But people who think of themselves as writers should be writing and don't worry about the other part of it.
And it's hard because we have what you call imposter syndrome. You don't feel like you are a good writer. And I think that all the time. Someone on Twitter asked me maybe like a year ago, they said, when did you finally realize that you're a writer? And I told them, I wrote back, I said, I don't think that I'm a writer. I still don't think that. I worry about it. I worry about it so much that I don't go back and read my books because I feel like they're not good. Where Wild Peaches Grow is doing well. It's getting good reviews. And I read it and it says beautifully written and a tearjerker and things like that. And I think, wow, I wish I knew what I wrote in that book because it must be good. But I won't go back to look because I'm so nervous about, is it good or not? So I tell people, just do it. Just go ahead and write that book if that's what you want to do.
Well, it's so interesting, Abby. There are a lot of actors. I was just watching a program where an actor is in this really, acclaimed movie, and he says he won't watch it. He's never watched himself in a movie. So artists, I'm going to put you in the category of those really successful, talented artists who can't stand to watch their own work, their movie or their play, or in this case, read your own material. But let the world do it. Let the world, be that sounding board for you. And let's talk about this incredible book that's getting these great reviews, Where Wild Peaches Grow, just out August 30th of this year. But that's not the only book that you wrote this year. We'll talk about, again, your prolific writing abilities. But Where Wild Peaches Grow, you said this is new for you. This is women's fiction. And this isn't your soft murder mysteries, your cozy mysteries. So what prompted you to want to move away from that genre where you had been writing for so long and to move into women's fiction?
Well, actually, I did want to kill someone in this book, but my agent told me not to. And I thought, how do you write a book without killing someone? But I managed to do it. And I got the idea. I knew I wanted to be a women's fiction, but there's so many subgenres in books that I still thought I could sneak murder in there. But I got the idea on Facebook. An anonymous person, they may have been my friend, I'm not sure, DM'd me and said, I got to tell you this story. This is a story about ex-slaves who went to Union soldiers in Natchez, Mississippi, and they were seeking refuge. They needed help. And they said that the city of Natchez swole from 10,000 residents to 100,000 in some stories say a couple of days, some story over the course of a week, because they needed help. They didn't have a place to live if they left the plantation. And the Union soldiers, not Confederate soldiers, sent them into a cave, a canyon. It's called the Devil's Punch Bowl, real place. And they said it was only one way in, one way out. And the Union soldiers blocked this way. And the slaves were down there yelling, we'll go back to slavery. We will do anything. Let us out. We're dying down here. And the Union soldiers yelled back, well, just bury them, bury yourselves where you drop. So then they said, in this canyon now grows wild peaches, and that the locals won't eat them because they know how they were fertilized. So I thought, I have to write that story. I did this research. I am a research addict. I research everything. If I'm watching a movie, I will pause it and do some research on it. And I couldn't find anything. I thought, as a lawyer, I needed something that had some teeth. And I couldn't find anything about it. I found lots of things about it, but just on random pages. And so I found someone in Natchez and I called and said, I want to find out about the Devil's Punch Bowl. And they said, if you're looking for peach trees, we don't have any in Natchez. And I said, no, there's wild peach trees growing everywhere. And I called the Department of Agriculture. I called the local college there in Mississippi. There are no peaches there. And I found out that this was a lost cause myth, that this story had been set up to say that Union soldiers did Blacks as poorly, slaves as bad as Confederate soldiers. And not only that, slaves were happy. They would have been happy to go back to the life they had.
So this was all created. Well, first of all, I'm glad that this is a myth, because listening to this is so horrifying that I'm just glad to learn that Union soldiers were not so callous and that they didn't brutalize these African Americans who were trying to find, some peace after being free. And I'm so happy to hear that people didn't die in this punch bowl, canyon. So that's good news. I mean, the fact that someone created it is not great news, but the fact that it's a lie or myth is good news.
So it's sort of like timely when I got the news that it wasn't true, as you spoke, it was a timely incident, because that was the time when they were toppling monuments and Confederate monuments and taking them down and making these decisions. And so I created characters. One of my characters, Nona Davenport, is an African-American studies professor in Chicago. And she is trying to rectify these kind of instances, to take documents of slaves, because if we go back to try to trace our ancestry, we can get back maybe 2 generations. After that, it's slave number 1, slave number 27. Those are the only names that are in the record books. So she's going back, trying to go through oral histories and things to correct that and to teach, the next generation these things. And she has to go back home. She's been estranged from her home and her family for over 20 years, and she has to rectify her leaving and also family secrets that not only their undocumented history as the things that she's teaching to try to stop, those things have happened even inside of her own family. So, and she has a sister, Julia, and they've been estranged for about 20 years.
Yeah, you talk about the main characters, obviously these estranged sisters. I think of this book as like this compelling story about relationships within a family, which is why I think it's so relatable to anyone, because everyone obviously is a part of a family and everyone has some kind of relationships, and most of us have some strained relationships within our familiar structure. It's also a book about family history, Southern history, cultural heritage. It definitely shows how different individuals in a family can react differently to the same situations, and then how people's reactions can be misunderstood. So this kind of through line in the book is miscommunications. Yes. Why that theme? I mean, that was such a heavy theme in the book about how people, make assumptions and they poorly communicate, and then, they can go off, into their own little worlds and have this tension exist. Whereas if they had just communicated properly, maybe the tension wouldn't be there.
So that was a microcosm, I think, that miscommunication, that wrong history that went between the 2 sisters and caused such a separation from them, was a microcosm of the world, and especially the little slavery incident that I kind of threw in the background, because that miscommunication is, the seed of the lost cause myths, and so many other things in history where you get wrong information and you base a whole theology, a whole thought process on that miscommunication. So I took it at a smaller level within family, and those things happen. I get reviews that say, oh, no one would stop speaking for something that small, but people do, especially within families, and especially when they're miles apart and they've decided to start a new life. The same thing in this world, when things happen, big things like, slavery or the Holocaust, just a little seed of the wrong information has people thinking differently about history. And so in my book, I say, you need to get history from those that have lived it, Yeah,
I want to read this passage that I found to be very evocative. This is the passage. The world's history shouldn't be taken away or added to at the whims of others who want to tell a different story. Tell the story like it happened. And how do we do that? So that's such an important theme in this book is, we don't get to just rewrite revisionism, we call it, right? We don't get to
Right.
rewrite history to suit our own personal agenda or our own ideology. But yet we find, as you said, on the world stage, whether people are trying to, say that slavery was voluntary. We heard, Kanye West and others say that. Or in a family where we rewrite, mama did this or daddy did this or, brother did that or sister did that. How do we cope with that? How do we deal with that when in a familiar structure, when someone is doing that? They're blatantly rewriting the history of the family.
Yeah, so that's the thing in the book. Until they came together, and they were forced to come together in my book because of the death of their father. They were forced to come together and they were forced to reconcile. I don't know how that can happen, as you say, on the world stage. How are we forced to come together and forced to reconcile? So I thought, even in the end of the book, you're not exactly sure where the sisters stand. You know that there is love between them and there is hope between them. And I think that's what we have on a small scale and on the larger scale, is that we have hope that we can all come together and that we can reconcile and we can work out whatever differences they may be, whether it's something you believed your sister said about you, or something that you think your mother did to you, or what someone in a larger scope has done to you and your family or whatever.
When you were writing the book, Abby, were you thinking about these bigger themes of conflict, and how oftentimes there is conflict on the world stage because of, revisionists who have, tried to rewrite our history? Or was that just kind of, is that the byproduct of the tension between these two sisters? Or was that really intentional, that you wanted us to think about these bigger issues?
Sometimes I don't think it was intentional, but I think it's just a part of me. People often tell me things about my book. I always have a family theme running through them, or they'll say, comment to me about themes that run through my book or things that I always write about. And I don't realize that I'm doing it. I don't think in the beginning, or maybe even in the end or throughout, but because it's a part of me, it is expressed when I write. And so I maybe would say it's intentional because I intentionally want to share my beliefs and the way I feel about things. And I knew I wanted to write about the Devil's Punch Bowl and that lost cause myth. But then I wanted to narrow it down about family because I'm all about family. So I think it was a combination of both. And, it's hard, even though there are so many publishers and literary agents and things that say they want to do this diversity. Sometimes it's still hard to get your diverse story out, to say, this is the way that I write and this is the way that I speak. No, it's not slang. It's how I am. And sometimes it can be too much. Sometimes you get away where they want those kind of books where, give us all that you have. And sometimes it's too much. And I've had that rejection before as well. So you do what
as you said that, I'm thinking about a character in the book, and I'm wondering, is she in this character? And this is Nona's friend, the white woman in the book. You pronounce her name Sanjeanette?
Sanjeanette.
Sanjeanette. Is Sanjeanette in the book because you believe that white publishers would be more receptive to this book if there is a white character that is centered? Because she's a problematic character in a lot of ways. And I was reading a bunch of reviews on the book, and most people do not like her. They don't understand why she's in the book. And she represents a certain kind of white privilege that exists currently, particularly among certain white women, that a lot of women of color in particular find offensive. So why Sanjeanette?
Well, I wrote about Jeanette. That's actually my niece's name, and she's nothing like that, but I borrowed her name. I wrote about that because when I write, especially about others, people that are other than me, I write from a sliding glass. There's this concept that you write from different views, a sliding glass kind of view, where a sliding glass, it's where people can come in and out in your world. There's a mirror sort of view where it's just me and I'm writing about me, and that's an own voice kind of book. And then there's windows where you can see out but people really can't get in. So sliding glass is the world. That's how the world is. So when I write books, all of my characters and all 35 of my books, all my main characters are Black because I'm Black. You write what you know. All of them have advanced degrees because I have one. You write what you know. But you also experience other things in the world. And I say, then just know what you write. And I know that there are other people like that. And even though some people may say she's a racist, she does have a Black friend. You know, I have a friend that's Black, but she cares about this friend. She just has a different idea of how things has happened in the world. And aren't we sitting next to those people or sitting across from those people or talking to those people all the time? I'm sure you have done shows where people have different opinions. I've just felt like I can't write a book and just have one viewpoint in there. You have to say what the world is really like in order for someone who's reading your book to understand that, to see the differences, to balance that scale, you know, that we as lawyers have talked about or learned about. So I just did it because it includes all kinds of people and it includes the world.
But Abby, the book has this central theme about miscommunication. And then you have this Jeanette character who is, perpetrating or perpetuating, I guess is the better word, perpetuating this myth about slavery and, the Civil War being about states' rights rather than the reality of slavery and the prominence of slavery as the driver for this Civil War. So why was there a reckoning, I guess is my question. Why was there a reckoning with Jeanette?
Well, she is who was the catalyst for Nona. Nona believed her story, as so many people do. When I was researching this, I saw so many posts that would say, why don't you tell the truth about what happened in Natchez? These were Black people, I could tell by their little avatar or whatever. And they wanted the truth about how we were sent into that canyon. Slaves were sent into that canyon. And that wasn't the truth. And I always tell people, when you write a story, people will ask me, what about if my person is a racist or a bigot or opposite of what's politically correct today? I said, you always balance that off with someone who's not, so you can have that conversation. I can't have that conversation in my book if it's unilateral, if it's only one-sided. I have to show both sides. So I created a Jeanette to say, this is how the lost cause myth goes. This is how it's perpetrated. This is what happens. She was the catalyst for Nona because Nona believed it. She tried to climb when she was 6 years old into that canyon, broke her arm. And when she grew up and found the truth, it motivated her to want to disseminate the truth, to become that African-American studies professor who will teach others that we can't believe in these myths. We have to rectify what is really our history, learn it and understand it. So the book needed her in order to move that story along to get to that point at the end where they can reconcile, because you have to have that conversation, whether it's within the family or whether it's in the world, because you're going to go head to head with Jeanette's.
Okay, that makes sense. So she was the motivation for Nona to get her degree when she left the town and to come back and say, I'm going to do my part to make sure that history is taught to these kids in an accurate way. Really good point. Let's talk about some of those other books you've written this year, because again, Where Wild Peaches Grow is one of 3 books you wrote in 2022. Yeah.
Well, actually, I am the author of 3 books. I edited one crime anthology that had 20 crime writers of color in it. And then I wrote another short story for Cleveland Noir that's coming out. So, and it started out in January with A Killer Sunday, was the 3rd book in my Ice Cream Parlor series. And it's about Wynn, who has an MBA, and she comes back home to close to Cleveland. It's a Cleveland suburb, to run her family's ice cream shop. Her grandparents started it in 1965, which was a tumultuous time. They started it in a neighborhood that was only 0.04% Black, and they've lasted all these years, and now she's taking over. And of course, there's a dead body. And then in August, that's when Where Wild Peaches Grow came out. And then just in October, Soul of a Killer, and I don't have that book, but it's the second book in my Books and Biscuits series, where there is a set of twins, fraternal twins. They were separated at birth, at 2 years old, and one was adopted out, the other grew up in foster care. And the one that grew up in foster care, the kids there told him as he got older that when you came, you weren't alone, you had a sibling. So as he grew up, he went looking for a sibling. They found each other and they opened up a bookstore and a soul food restaurant. And again, there's a dead body. So
I know you write, Abby, about Black characters because you said you're Black and you write what you know. Why is it important that your characters are successful, either business owners or, advanced degrees, professionals? Are you trying to, in some ways, correct the decades of negative images of African Americans? Is that your intention? Or again, is that just a natural consequence of you writing about what you do know and what you love?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I do write Blacks because I am Black. I do write advanced degrees because I do that. And actually, being an entrepreneur is most times a hook in Cozy Mysteries. They will have a bakery shop or a restaurant or something. So that's kind of a hook. But that's where I struggled when I first started the ice cream parlor book, because I thought, well, a lot of times entrepreneurs aren't necessarily ones that are well educated. They are not uneducated. I'm not saying that. They probably just didn't go and get advanced degrees. So I gave her an MBA. She worked at a ad firm in New York before she came back home to family. And I think it's right what you know. I struggled to get those 3 degrees. I worked hard and long. And during that time, I was a single mom. I married, divorced, was a single mom. I took care of an 80-year-old mother, and education was very important to me. And it's important. I'm an advocate of education to anyone who will listen to me. Get an education. It doesn't necessarily mean you go and get 3 degrees. Maybe it's a vocational education, or a 2-year associate degree program education. And that's all fine. Entrepreneurs sometimes just get an apprenticeship education, and that's good. Whatever you want to do, just do it well. And I think that's why I put that in my book. It's just who I am, and it's my belief system. So those things just automatically, naturally
find their way into the books. Why the series, Abby? And a lot of writers write in this way. I've had Beverly Jenkins and other successful writers, and they all have series. Like you said, did you say Business and Biscuits?
Books and Biscuits. Books and Biscuits.
So why, this series where, there's a theme, I guess, in similar characters, does that help you, think about the storylines? Why organize in that fashion?
Well, some genres just naturally lend themselves to series. So when I signed for Cozy Mystery, my first series, the Ice Cream Parlor Mysteries, I signed for 3 books. Some books do better as standalones, like the women's fiction book. But when you get into crime stories, a lot of times, like Tracy Clark, she has a series of books and she just started a new series. And then you have Wanda Morris, who's writing just single books, they're crime books. So it's sort of the contract that you get, but in Cozies, you're usually going to get a 2 or 3 book deal initially because Cozy Mysteries are, as I said, they're more of a friendly mystery, and they are usually set in a quaint, small village where you have lots of nosy neighbors, and that's how you find out, who's saying what and who's done what. And it lends itself better to a series because you get to know you get to know the characters and the place. And just like Jessica Fletcher, that was a long running series. It has about 50 books written in that series. I don't know how there's anybody alive in Cabot Cove anymore, because there are so many books. Right. So it's just because, and then people want to go back to that and read some more. They become friends with them. And all my Cozy series are written in first person. So it's like I take my reader's hand and I say, come walk with me as I solve this murder.
So you mentioned Jessica Fletcher multiple times, and we know she is the successful, face associated with Murder, She Wrote, which was also a long-running TV series. Have any of your books, or have you thought about, your books, and are any of them you think conducive to being, a TV project, a movie project, or a project similar to the Murder, She Wrote project?
Let me think. All of them. I think all of them. Hallmark movies and mysteries. Those shows on there. The Aurora Tea Garden. I don't know all the other ones. Al Roker wrote one of the stories that they made movies out of. That's conducive to cozy mysteries. It's the amateur sleuth who decides, there's a dead body in their kitchen, and they decide that I'm going to solve it. So yes, my books are exactly what kind of movies they're showing on not on Acorn TV, on Hallmark Murders and Mysteries. Some Lifetime movies are like that. They are so
lighthearted, family friendly. Okay, I can see definitely Hallmark family oriented movies. Your books are all about family. What about the demographics, Abby? As I'm listening and I'm thinking about Hallmark and some of those stations haven't always been very diverse. They haven't had, movies with diverse characters or themes that resonate with people of color, particularly Black people. Mm-hmm. Have you found a Black audience, or is your audience diverse? Is it mostly a white audience? Like, who's the audience for your cozy mysteries? Because many of them take place in, familiar Black spaces, like a soul food restaurant. That's not typically going to be, a place that a lot of folks outside the Black community can identify with. Maybe they've never even had soul food, don't even know what it is. So what audience are you finding for your books?
Well, just in case they haven't had any soul food, there are soul food recipes in the back of the book. So great, try your hand at it.
That's another reason to buy these books.
My readers are all over the place. I don't have any readers. I have had bookstagrammers and different people come to me and say, I was looking for a Black mystery and I wanted to read your book. Or I just did a podcast with a young lady who said she wanted to read more Black cozy mystery authors. There's only about 5 or 6 of us, actually, and more Latina cozy mystery authors. So some people actually seek that out. But although I let readers know offhand whether they put a Black hand on my cover or a Black face on my cover, I always let them know in the book that my character is Black. The default, if you don't mention the color of or the race of your character, it's white. So I don't want that default there, because that's not the perspective that I'm writing from. But I write for everyone. And just as I explained, it's a sliding glass door. There's everyone in my book.
Do you find, Abby, that having that, and I'm looking at those Black figures, hands on your book, does that bring people in, you think? Or a white person who's shopping Barnes and Nobles who sees that Black hand, might they say, oh, this book isn't for me?
No, they would never say my book isn't for them. My book is for everyone. But I think that's a product of the new diversity thing, that yes, Blacks do read books and other people read books. And it's just, you can't just have the white male writing the book. Anyone can write a book. And that's what I'm telling you writers out there. Anyone can write a book, but write what you know, or know what you write. And I don't think it should stop anyone from reading my book. I've never heard that said, but as I said, I have everyone in my book, because that's the world that we live in. I can't go any place usually, and there's only Black people. I went to small schools. I was usually the only Black person, or one of few Black people. And so my worlds that I create in my book are diverse, as is the world. And I think that's what you would get from any Black writer. We write for everyone's enjoyment, because we are part of this world. We're not separated, segregated. And so we should blend in, and so should our stories, because they're about life. And you hear so many times people say, well, this story can be told with anyone, any character in its place, any race or any culture, because those things happen wherever you go. All over the world, families have problems and issues. there's dysfunction in them. So I just tell that story from my perspective, but it's the same story. And I hear that so many times with Where Wild Peaches Grow. I see myself in this book, or it's something someone in my family that's happened to. And that comes from everyone, all races, all cultures. They can relate to my books.
Final question for you, Abby. Back to talking about families and all families having, different issues that they have to face. Where Wild Peaches Grow. Obviously, we talked about the strong family relationships between the two sisters in the book and the conflict in the book. What's the big takeaway you want people to have from Where Wild Peaches Grow?
I think it's family. Family is so important to me. And I think it's, stick with your family, believe in your family. You can't always hang out all the time with your family because, you got all these different kinds, but be there for your family. Family is just important. And loving your family and sticking with your family. Our time on this earth, we don't know how long it'll be. Don't get upset with someone in your family for 20 years and don't talk to them, or wait until after they've died, like the father did, and then regret it. So I think my big takeaway is to get it right, stay with your family, and be able to face this world and all the conflicts and miscommunication that the world will bring to us together.
Family over everything. What an excellent message during this holiday season, a message that can resonate with everyone. Hopefully someone gets inspired and goes to call that brother, sister, cousin, auntie, uncle that they haven't spoken to in years, probably over some small miscommunication that if they just got on the phone, they could clear up. Thank you so much, Abby, for this book, Where Wild Peaches Grow. Thank you for the 34 other books that you have written. Thank you for teaching writing for free in those libraries. And thank you for offering to, communicate with any writer out there that may be stuck and need to get unstuck. Really appreciate, what you are contributing to the literary community, having more Black authors telling those Black stories, stories that are universal, but told from the perspective of a Black woman, educated, super educated Black woman, a single mom, entrepreneur. You wear so many hats, and I think people, will resonate. Your books will resonate and will be relatable to so many people. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful holiday season, and I want to make sure everyone picks up Where Wild Peaches Grow and any of the other books that Abby has on the bookshelves. Perfect gifts during the holidays. Yes. Thank you again, my friend.
Thank you.
What an amazing transformation of a career from a lawyer, professor, to an accomplished writer with 35 books under your belt. Congratulations again to Abby Vandiver, Abby Collette, Cade, Bentley, all the pen names that she uses to write cozy mysteries and now a women's fiction book. I'm so incredibly excited, proud, happy for Abby and the work that she's doing, the fact that she didn't allow her illness or any obstacles to get in her way. She wanted to write, so she just wrote. And now she's sharing her brilliance and her skill and expertise as a writer with others, offering those free library writing courses in her hometown of Cleveland. And she's also offered to make herself available to any of my viewers. What a generous, generous offer. So I want to make sure that we go out and support Abby, that we buy her book, Where Wild Peaches Grow, that we buy any number of her books that you'll find on bookshelves throughout this country. You can find her books online at Amazon.com. You can obviously walk into not only the big bookstores, but local bookstores. Make sure you support this author. It is so important that if we want to have diverse voices, if we want women of color, Black women, Latina women to be able to get publishing deals, to write books that we can find no matter where we live in this country, we must support them. We've got to buy their books. We've got to show up to their book signings. We've got to, show up to their virtual events online. We have to support them. I know as an author that there's nothing more crushing than to have a really powerful story to tell, to get a publishing deal, and then to not have that book do well because you don't get enough support. So let's make sure that the viewers of the special report are supporting all of these authors that lend them their time to us. They come on the show, they talk about their books. We want to make sure that they are getting lots and lots of love from the special report. So again, the book is Where Wild Peaches Grow. It's the perfect gift for the holidays. Give it to all of your friends, your family members, any of those family members you haven't talked to in months, years, maybe even decades. This is the perfect time because family is everything. And Where Wild Peaches Grow is a book that will have you thinking about family and how to reconcile with those that you love. Be safe out there. And remember, we're all in this together.